Hello and welcome to this new lecture on an introduction of inner product space. In this lecture, we will be considering certain definitions, terms, symbols, and the formal definition of inner product spaces. So let us see what is the scope of this lecture. We will be considering inner product of vectors at the very outset. Then we will take up outer product of vectors and we will see what is the difference between these two products of vectors, and it will be followed by angle between two vectors. And finally all the symbols, definitions we will be considering in these three topics will be used in the definition of inner product spaces, and in the last we will be taking up some examples. So let us have the definition of inner product of vectors. So when we consider these two vectors x equal to x1 to xn and y equal to y1 to yn in the Euclidean space Rn, these vectors could have been taken in the parenthesis separated by comma x1 comma x2 up to xn and y1 comma y2 comma yn, but I have considered these in the form of column matrices for a particular purpose, and that purpose will be very clear while we go further. The inner product of these two vectors, that is multiplication of row vector by a column vector, is defined with the symbol left angle, right angle and x comma y. It is as good as writing the multiplication of two column one row matrix xt, and xt means x transpose and y vector. So if we multiply this row vector by this column vector, we get x1 y1 plus x2 y2 plus xn yn. So this is the formal definition of an inner product of two vectors in Euclidean space. This is as good as a scalar product of two vectors we define in the classical vector algebra in R2 or R3 or R4. So next we define outer product. When we have defined the inner product, there must have been some outer product also. So let us see what is the outer product of these two vectors and which one is useful for us in discussing the inner product spaces. So before we go for outer product, let us have an example of this inner product. I have taken these two vectors in the parenthesis form separated by comma. The components are 1 minus 1 2 1 and 0 1 3 minus 1. These are 4 in number, so these are the vectors in R4. Then their inner product is defined by this type of matrix multiplication. This is row vector and this is column vector, and when we multiply a row by a column, it is 4 by 1 matrix, it is 1 by 4 matrix, and it is 4 by 1 matrix. So when we multiply it, we get 1 by 1 matrix. So the corresponding components are multiplied 1 by 0, minus 1 by 1, 2 by 3 and 1 by minus 1. So when we multiply and add them, we get equal to 4. So this is the simplest example of inner product we are going to take up in the discussions. Let us now define the outer product. If we consider same vectors x and y in Rn, and then the outer product of these vectors denoted by x O multiplication y equal to x y transpose. Earlier it was x transpose y, now it is x y transpose. We have taken column on the left hand side and row on the right hand side. In this case, it is the n cross 1 matrix and it is 1 cross n matrix. So the resulting matrix will be n cross n. That is, the outer product of these two vectors will be a matrix of order n by n. But if we consider two vectors of different size, one in Rn and one in Rm, then the resulting matrix will be according to the number of components available in the vectors, and it will depend upon the multiplication also. So if I multiply this column vector by this row vector, then it is x1 multiplied by y1, then x1 multiplied by y2, x1 multiplied by yn. So all these products will form the first row. Similarly for second and up to n. So all these n rows and n columns will be constructed with the help of this outer product. But we are always interested in using the inner product only, because we are going to study the inner product vector spaces. So the outer product of two matrix is a matrix. A vector having m components and another vector having n components will result in m cross n matrix. Here it is n and n, so the matrix is a square matrix. Next, we take up the important term we are going to use in the definition of inner product spaces is norm of a vector. So let us see what is norm of a vector. The length of a vector in classical vector algebra we studied in R2 or R3 is called the norm of vector in higher dimensions or in the linear algebra. So this is the picture where we have taken a two-dimensional plane, that is R2, where we have considered a vector that in blue line, it is x vector. If we drop a perpendicular from head of this vector on the x-axis, we get this particular component of this vector and the horizontal component of this vector. If we have the length of this vector equal to r, then this r will be calculated with the help of Pythagoras theorem, and these distances will be calculated by using the projection. So this we will be taking up later. So if we want to define the norm of a vector, then we define the square of norm of vector x as the inner product of these the vector with itself only. So inner product of a vector with itself is denoted by the square of the norm of the vector, and this norm is nothing but the sum of squares of the components values, x1 square plus x2 square plus x3 xn square, and this is the length of the vector we call in two dimensions, and in the Euclidean space Rn we call it the norm of a vector. So the norm of x is equal to this double line x equal to under root inner product xx equal to under root square root of x1 square plus x2 square up to xn square. So this is the very simple and formal definition of norm of vector. It possesses certain important properties which will be useful in defining the inner product spaces and in solving the further problems. So let us see what properties of norm. Number one, the norm of a vector is always non-negative. That is, it is a greater than or equal to 0. So it is also known as positive definiteness of the value of the norm of vector. The positive definiteness means greater than 0 is positive and equal to 0 is definiteness. So let us see when does this become the definite. So norm of a vector is 0, that is definite, if and only if it is a null vector. So this is the mathematical sentence we have used for defining norm of 0 vector, and it is always it is 0 if and only if the vector itself is a null vector. And third one is if lambda is any real number, then the norm of this lambda x is equal to the absolute value of lambda times the norm of x. We have taken this absolute value because lambda may be negative or positive. So in order to preserve the nature of norm, that is positivity or positive definiteness of the norm, we have to consider the absolute value of lambda. So the norm of vector lambda x is equal to absolute value of lambda times norm of x, and this vector is the scalar product of this real number lambda and vector x itself. So scalar product, norm of a scalar product of a vector with a real number is equal to this one. Next we come what is the normalized vector. So we consider this vector that is in the form of a column vector, and if its norm is equal to 1, then we call it a unit vector, or x is said to be normalized. So if we are given the vector in the form of a column vector, and if the length of this vector comes out to be unity, then we call it normalized vector. These components x1, x2, xn can be any number but not all 0. If we have this x1 equal to 1 and rest of the components 0, then it is automatically a unit vector and its norm is equal to 1. So unit vector is always normalized vector. But if the norm is not unity, then how to make it normal vector or normalized vector? So to normalize or to make it a vector of unit length, it requires division by its norm only. So a normalized vector is denoted by x inverted t equal to x upon norm of x. So a non-null vector, which is the scalar multiple of itself by reciprocal of its norms, it is called normalized vector. Here we can see that this norm is a scalar, this is a vector, then this we can call this as the scalar product of 1 upon norm of x into x. So we have defined that a non-null vector, because if it is a null vector, then its norm will be 0 and we will not be able to define the normalized vector. So this is the definition we will be using in the coming discussions. Next we take up the angle between two vectors. The importance of the angle between two vectors in Euclidean space or any other vector space is of utmost importance in defining the projections of vectors as well as the Gram-Schmidt process of orthogonalization of vectors. So this is very important concept we are going to use. It is although simple, but we have to revisit this concept. So if we consider two-dimensional plane and we consider these two vectors x and y and the angle between them is theta, then we can define cos theta equal to the scalar product or inner product xy divided by the norms or the lengths of these vectors. So if it is two-dimensional plane, we call it the dot product upon the length multiplication of the length of these two vectors. And if we call them the vector belonging to Euclidean space or any other space, then we call the inner product divided by norms of these two vectors, and it is the angle between or cosine of the angle between these two vectors. So these norms are replaced by these scalar inner products xx, yy, and if I use the matrix notation, I can write it in this particular fashion. So as you know, the value of cos theta lies between -1 and +1. So the absolute value of cos theta will always be less than or equal to 1. So this can also be used to define that the scalar product or the inner product of these two vectors is always less than or equal to the product of their norms. This we will be taking up in the next lecture, where we will prove the Cauchy-Schwarz inequality. So let us now define two new concepts. One is orthogonal and one is orthonormal vectors. So first we are taking up orthogonal vectors. So two non-null vectors x and y are said to be orthogonal if their inner product is 0. The word orthogonal ortho means 90 degree or perpendicular, and gonal means angle. So if two vectors at 90 degree are called orthogonal vectors, and as you know, the dot product for two perpendicular vector is always 0, and similar concept is used here to state that the inner product of these two vectors is 0. Then we call these two vectors x and y as orthogonal vectors. It is very interesting to note that null vector is orthogonal to every member vector in a vector space V, because when we multiply, we take the dot product or the inner product of any vector 0, y or 0, x, it is always coming out to be 0. So we can say that null vector is orthogonal to every member vector in the vector space, and it is the only vector which is orthogonal to itself. The 0, 0, the inner product of 0 vectors, 0, 0 is always 0. So it is very important to note that this is the null vector which is orthogonal to every member including itself. Next we take two non-null vectors x and y which are said to be orthonormal. This word orthonormal is derived from two words, orthogonal and normalized. So ortho for perpendicular vectors, and normal means the vectors having unit length or unit norm. So when there is a combination of orthogonality and normality, we call those vectors orthonormal. So these two vectors will be called orthonormal if their norms measure unity and their inner product is 0. So this ortho is matched with this red color equation x comma y equal to 0, and this green color normal is matched with the norm of x and norm of y are same and equal to 1. So this orthonormal concept will also be used in the Gram-Schmidt process of orthogonalization and orthonormalization of vectors. Now we define the inner product space, IPS. So let V be a real vector space over a field F. The meaning of using this word real means we are considering only real numbers or the real components of vectors we are going to take up. So it is a mapping F which is defined from V cross V to F, that is external composition V cross V to F, that attaches with each pair of vectors x and y in V a real number. We are taking a vector with the help of these two sets V into V, and we are getting a scalar which belongs to this set F. And if it is denoted by this inner product x comma y, then the set or the vector space V is known as inner product space, provided it satisfies following axioms. So what are those axioms which the vector space V need to satisfy for being called it as an inner product space? So for this we consider any three vectors x, y, z belonging to V and a real number a. So that the first axiom we want to state is the inner product of a vector with itself is always greater than or equal to 0, and it will be 0 if and only if it is a 0 vector. So this property or this axiom is called as positive definite property of inner product. Second axiom we have taken is the inner product of x and y commutes with yx in V. So if commutative property is satisfied by the two vectors, the inner product, then we call it the symmetry property. So there will be no difference if we write x comma y the inner product or y comma x as inner product. Third property we are going to take is ax comma y is equal to a times the inner product of x and y, which also belongs to V. Then it is known as homogeneity property. And the fourth one is x plus y comma z equal to x comma z plus y comma z. That is the inner product of sum of two vectors is equal to sum of inner products of those two vectors with the third vector. So this is called the distributive property, or we can call it the linearity property in general. So a real vector space together with this inner product axioms defined, it is called a real inner product space, RIPS. So what is the linearity property of this inner product spaces I was talking about? So let us define the linearity property in general. A statement of this linearity property says that if V is an inner product space, then for any x, y, z belonging to V and all real numbers a and b belonging to F, the linearity property of elements in V is given by this expression ax plus b, that is the inner product of this linear sum with z is equal to a times the inner product of x with z and b plus b times the inner product of y with z. So how to prove this linearity property? We consider the left hand side of this distributive property or the simple linearity property, which is defined at serial number 4 in the definition of inner product space. X plus y, the inner product with z, is equal to inner product of x with z plus inner product of y with z. So we can utilize this property to write the left hand side in the following equation: ax plus by comma z equal to the sum of these two inner products. Now we can use the homogeneity property ax comma y equal to ax comma y, and this use of this property will lead to the RHS. So it is very simple to prove, but it is very important. We take up the example, and we have to prove that the Euclidean space R raised to power n is a real inner product space, and for that we need to show that the Euclidean space Rn is a real inner product space. What we are going to use is the three vectors x, y and z in Rn, and a be any real number. Then we define the inner product by this expression x comma y equal to x1 y1 plus x2 y2 up to xn yn. The first property we want to prove is that the inner product defined by this equation is positive definite. So if I write the inner product x comma x, then it is the sum of squares of these numbers, and we know that the sum of squares is always positive, so we can say that it is always positive. So positive part is completed, and if we take one of this vector to be 0, or we want to prove it equal to 0, you are very well versed that the sum of squares will be 0 if and only if each of these components is 0, and if the components of these vectors are 0, then the vector will be 0 vector itself, or the null vector itself. So definiteness is also proved over here. Second is, if I write x comma y equal to this product defined by this, then I can use the property of real numbers, that is the field f, that these two numbers x1 y1 commute. We can write y1 x1, so I can write y1 x1, y2 x2 and yn xn. So if I use this inner product in this form, then I can write y first and x thereafter. So I can write this as a inner product of y comma x. Next is the third property we want to prove, the homogeneity property ax comma y. If I write this in the expanded form, it is in this particular mode ax1, ax2, axn, and this dot product with these components. So it will be, a will be taken out because it is a vector, only a will come out. It will not be like a n times a power n. You cannot make it because it represents a column in the matrix, and if we take a particular real number common out of it, only it will come out with from all the possible components. So this dot product can be represented as a times inner product xy. Fourth property is the linearity property x plus y comma z equal to this expression, where we have written the sum of vectors in the form of sum of corresponding components. So these are not the plus, these will be the comma. So if I multiply these with each other, then I can get x1 y1, x1 plus y1 into z1 plus x2 plus y2 into z2 and so on up to zn. So I can separate them out, x1 z1 plus x2 z2 from this second term, and the last term xn zn in the first bracket, and similarly the second terms of each term will be considered in the second bracket. So I can very well write that it is x comma z and y comma z, that is the sum of inner products of x with z and y with z. This proves that the R raised to power n, that is Euclidean space, is a real inner product space. So question arises, is there any complex inner product space? The answer is yes, and this complex inner product space will be taken up in a different lecture. We now see that a set of continuous functions defined on the interval AB is a real inner product space. So how to prove that the real inner product space is satisfied by this set? So we have to define the mapping for these continuous functions by this particular integral from a to b, the product f into g. So in the discrete case, we define the sum of all the components and in this we have defined the integral, because continuous functions are always handled with the help of integrals. So we have defined the mapping with the help of f comma g equal to this integral, where these f and g are the continuous functions defined on the interval a comma b. This interval may be entire real line or it may be a part of that. So it is required to prove that the mapping defines a real inner product space, and for that we require all the 4 axioms to be set. So for first axiom we take f belonging to this set, this vector space. It needs to verify that the inner product of f with f is always greater than or equal to 0. So it is very important to learn in this particular example that how the continuous functions are used for defining the real inner product spaces. If I use the definition of mapping fg and I replace g by f, then it becomes integral a to b fx square dx, or we can say that the norm of x is the square root of this integral. Here you can observe that the integrand is the positive continuous function fx square. So we say that since the integrand fx square is non-negative continuous function, it follows that this inner product measures the area between the graph of this square function and the x-axis on this interval AB, and consequently we say that when it is the area, it is always greater than 0. So let us now see what happens if we want to prove the definiteness of this inner product. So also if this definite the inner product is 0, then we can say that it will be true if and only if the area lying between the curve fx square and x-axis is 0, which is possible only if the function y equal to fx0 is taken to be 0 itself. So this is what we have written fx square equal to 0 for all x belonging to the interval AB, and hence we say that this is positive definite inner product f comma f, because it is the equality is possible only if fx is 0. So this entire discussion of positive definiteness is very important for the further problems. Second property, we want to prove that the inner product defined by f and g commute with each other. So we can write the definition a to b fx gx, and continuous functions makes no difference if we write them fx into gx or gx into fx. So this is the property we have used over here, and we can write that it is the inner product of g and f. So this property is justified because the product of two real valued functions commute. For any real number lambda, the homogeneity of mapping is defined by lambda f comma g equal to lambda f gx dx, and this lambda is a constant or the real number. We can take it out from the sign of integration, and the remaining expression is equal to g comma f. So we have proved that lambda f comma g is equal to lambda times g comma f, that is the inner product. It is not g comma f, it should be f comma g. And lastly, this distributive property can very easily be proved. So this shows that the vector space of continuous functions defined on the interval a comma b is inner product space. So thank you for watching patiently and in the up to the last. In next lecture we will be considering some further properties of inner product spaces.